So the first complication in naming chemical compounds is that different types of compounds have different names. So we're going to look at 3 types of compounds. And then we'll learn a different naming scheme, a different process for naming each different type of compound. So we'll look at 3 different types. The types that we've seen previously are ionic compounds and molecular compounds. We're going to add one category to this, and these are things that actually could be within one of these 2 categories. Usually they're within the category of molecular compounds, but they have special behaviors that we want to focus on all on their own. So we want to give them special names, and those are acids. So we're going to learn 3 basic naming schemes, and the very first thing we need to do is be able to determine whether something is an ionic compound, whether it's a molecular compound, or whether it's an acid, because that will dictate how we go about naming it. So let's remind ourselves, ionic compounds are whenever you combine a metal with a non-metal. So if we go back to our periodic table and want to remember, I can get this here. There's this dividing line over here. Things on this side of it are called metals. Things on this side of it are called nonmetals. Nonmetals. And things along it are called metalloids. Now that won't really be important for this distinction here. We just want to know, is it on this side or this side, to know whether it's an ionic compound. So if it's an ionic compound, it'll have something from this side, a metal combining with a nonmetal. Molecular compounds then have only nonmetals. So when we find to know if something's a molecular compound, it would have 2 things combining from this region over here. And then last, acids, they're about a certain behavior of the element hydrogen. So hydrogen does actually counts as a nonmetal. If we didn't call this out, but this line only goes up to the second row. So if you actually continue, it would cut over, and actually hydrogen is included with the nonmetals. So because of that, most acids really are molecular compounds that have hydrogen with other nonmetals. But they have their own special behavior, and the way that hydrogen interacts in these is special. So the way we're going to recognize acids is really simple. If you see a formula that starts with hydrogen, then we're going to call that an acid, and we're going to give it an acid name. We have a whole chapter later to talk about what it means to be an acid, why we're so interested in them. But for now, it's going to be really simple. All we have to know is if there's a metal and a nonmetal combined, it's ionic. And the metal will always be the first element. So if it starts with a metal, it's ionic. If the formula has only nonmetals or starts with a nonmetal, it's molecular. If the formula starts with an H, it's an acid. So it's really simple. And that'll be our first activity. Can you go through and just determine whether each thing is ionic, molecular, or an acid?